Welcome to Avoiding the Void, the Bingewatcher's guide to the small screen, where two 20-somethings with too much free time tell you what to watch to keep boredom at bay and to avoid the void that is our current reality. I'm Nell.
And I'm Rosie, and this week we're going to be talking all things It's a Sin on Channel 4, but first we have the headlines.
A group of Redditors decided to manipulate the stock market this week, and Wall Street got very cross indeed. If you want to get more insight into the mess of big banking in America, watch Adam McKay's The Big Short, or if you want to see more insight into the people who got cross, maybe try American Psycho.
It's been a year since the first case of coronavirus reached the UK. If you feel like you're living in a never-ending hell cycle like we are, we recommend watching Groundhog Day to remind you that eventually the spell might be broken and that Bill Murray can see us through anything.
The story of Rita Ora breaking lockdown rules has continued to develop as it becomes apparent that she paid the restaurant £5,000 to hold her birthday party. For more content about the gall of rich people and wealth inequality, we recommend watching Parasite.
And finally, the music of Billy Joel has gone viral on TikTok. If you want to experience the true height of his musical career, he wrote the soundtrack for the often overlooked Oliver & Company, available on Disney+. It's Oliver Twist, but in New York, with cats and dogs. What's not to love? And that's the headline. Okay, so we're having a different segment this week. We're going to talk about Trash Corner for this week. So me and Nell both have recommendations that are thoroughly trash. So if you need something to distract yourself and something funny and a little bit booky, then we've got that for you. So no, you watched something interesting.
I started watching Fate, the Winx Saga on Netflix. It came out on the 22nd of January, season 1. Absolute trash. I knew you could tell from the trailer exactly what it's going to be. It's like the same vein of like Riverdale or Sabrina's Chilling Adventures, I think, more because it's got the like fantasy element. It's
What's
definitely
it
about? It's about fairies. It's based on the cartoon, which I never watched but know of, and it's basically they all go to this like I think it's high school, but again it's hard to tell because they all look like they're in their 30s, and they all speak like they're in the 30s as well, and there's like this threat of these monsters on the outside called the Burned Ones, and the main character is like a changeling fairy, so she's grown up in like, I was going to say the Muggle world, but I guess the human world, you know, the kind of vibe, and she's like new to all this world of magic, and each of the girls who are fairies have like different elements that they control.
Okay.
She's a fire fairy, there's like a water one, an earth one, all this kind of stuff.
It's like Avatar.
Yeah, and there's like a central mystery that needs to be solved that we're just kind of getting hints of. There's like a kind of like villainous edge to it. Yeah, there's nothing.
I'm intrigued.
Yeah, there's nothing particularly challenging about it. Like I said, everyone looks in the classic like teen drama way older than they're meant. I think they're meant to be like 16 from what I can gather,
but they all look like they're getting a mortgage out and ready to settle down.
It could be a university that they're all at, honestly. Like no one looks their age.
Fate, the Winx Saga does not explain this.
No, can you believe? Yeah, it's not a hard thing to like commit to if you just want something like fun and stupid to watch. Nice. From what I can tell, the people who are fans of the animated series are not happy with it because it's been given like the Riverdale treatment in the words. But if you know nothing about it and you just want something fun, it's definitely, you know, only 6 episodes.
OG Winx Saga fans.
Yeah. I don't know what you're upset about because I don't know anything about it, but you go off.
Tread carefully.
Yeah.
In a similar but completely different vein, I've been watching a lot of Married at First Sight Australia. It's on All 4, so it's on Channel 4. They start, I think, from season 4, so you don't get season 1. Married at First Sight Australia, the premise is these 3 psychologists have a pool of people that come in and interview, and they're looking for love. And the premise basically is that these psychologists pair strangers up. It's arranged marriage, but on TV. They pair these strangers up and then they marry them on TV, and then they film their early days of their married life as these 2 strangers who are now husband and wife. Inevitable drama and hijinks and stupidity that gets involved. It's kind of like you have to kind of suspend the idea that marriage is being basically the construct of marriage being basically spat on in this entire show. And it's very funny, and if you're looking for something fun like Love Island-y, then I recommend Married at First Sight Australia as well.
Yes, but out of Trash Corner now, we're going into more good telly now, good recommendations. And this week we have to talk about It's a Sin, also on All 4. It came out last week, we believe, and it's basically about the AIDS crisis in the UK in the 1980s.
Is AIDS? It's a racket. It's a money-making scheme for drugs companies. Do you seriously think there's an illness that only kills gay men? It can calculate that you're gay and kill you, but no one else.
It follows 6 friends, 5 of which are gay men, and how they maneuver in the AIDS crisis that hit the UK in the 80s and how they handle it. And it's sad, it's intense,
Big sad, big many cry.
Many cries were had. I watched the last episode this morning, so maybe on the YouTube I'll put a little picture of what I looked like when I was watching the last episode this morning. I was a sobbing mess. I woke up in bed and I started to watch it, and it really well done in the kind of emotional maturity it has. It's not all doom and gloom.
No. There's like a lot of joy in it, which I appreciated a lot. Especially one of my favorite like tropes or like things is just like found family, which you're just naturally going to get in stuff about queer people. It's like the foundation of it. So like just the energy of them, all the like there's like I'd say like 5 main characters, or like 3 or 4 main characters with a couple of other like important secondary ones, all like living in the Pink Palace, which is their flat that they own together, and it just made me feel all the good warm things, and then that like the joy of found family as well, like, and what I appreciated as well in a similar vein was that there was no like, because in a lot of stuff about gay people there's the struggle of like finding who you are, and there wasn't really much of that in this at all.
They were all very while some were closeted, they were all very aware that they were gay.
Yeah, there was the struggle came externally rather than internally, at least for the most part. Obviously in the end it kind of it got into the internal struggles that kind of exacerbated the AIDS crisis, but those internal struggles only it made it very clear that they only came from external problems, you know, from other people's problems with gay people, not their problems with themselves. Which I really liked. I was like, that's really refreshing, because you don't see that very often.
No, there was a lot of pride in this program. Almost all of them extremely outwardly gay and proud to be gay, and there was no real turmoil there, which I feel is good, because sometimes it can be just so upsetting to see.
Yeah,
unnecessary.
Yeah, especially in a show that's primarily about the AIDS crisis. I really don't think it was necessary on top of that. Obviously, a lot of people do struggle with that, but that story has been told so many times. That's like, I think that's the thing, is like, it wasn't even just that they were okay with being gay. They loved being gay.
They reveled in it.
Yeah, there was
Yeah.
there was a joy in it, which, yeah, in a in stories about being queer, you don't see that often on mainstream TV anyway. You know, it's that's still a rare thing to find.
Yeah, it was really nice and really refreshing. The bits that were joyful were lovely to see, and it was really well written. And like you said, these found family, this group of people, they were really well written together, and the chemistry they had really translated really well across the scene, and you felt really close to these characters, and that a testament to Russell T Davies, who wrote it. He also wrote the really popular TV show, I think he wrote it or produced or something, the Queer as Folk. I'm a fan of Russell T Davies from his Doctor Who years, as not many people may know. I'm a huge Doctor Who fan, especially circa kind of David Tennant, Christopher Eccleston era, and he was the head writer for those seasons. So I love Russell T Davies. I think he just brings a lot of humanity and warmth to characters, and really, really makes you fall in love with them, which is the best thing. When you're watching a program like this, you have to feel connected, and some of these characters were based off real people, weren't they?
Yeah, I read an article about how Jill, the actress who plays Jill's mother, is the person that she's based off.
Yeah.
And that's like a really powerful thing to be able to say, and that I thought that was really nice that they were able to do stuff like that.
Yeah. And I feel the impact of that as well. I feel a lot of people feel like the AIDS crisis was so long ago.
I think another thing why I think this show is important in that respect is that I think a tweet went around, like, I can't remember when, but it was just talking about how the queer community don't have elders, and they do, but there's like very few of them. So because the AIDS crisis just wiped out a generation of people, and it feels further away than it actually was, just because there's like so few that's come out of it.
Yeah.
And I think, again, the show did a really good job because they really didn't pull any punches about like how many of the characters died, or like
the scale,
equally the scale, the emotional impact of it, the sheer amount of them, and the randomness of it.
Yeah.
As well.
The randomness of it was really, I think, powerful to me, because I think a lot of stigma that comes with or came with, at least, AIDS and HIV came from, sexual promiscuity and being, going around and sleeping with as many people as you can, whereas they did show that side, but they also showed that it could be completely the opposite as well, with the character Colin. Colin's a young Welsh gay man in the story, and he's very, very shy.
So there isn't a boyfriend?
No.
But you'd like there to be?
Yes.
Don't worry, I won't tell anyone.
Yeah, I think that storyline is the one that like emotionally gut punched me the most.
Yeah.
All of it. It was just ugh. And I do have to say, I think his performance was really good.
Yeah. It was great acting.
Yeah, all around.
Yeah.
I'd say
at
like
times,
him and Keeley Hawes.
Yes.
Really,
who plays Richie, the lead character's mother.
I know it's acting. Well, I'm hardly an expert, but from the little I can gather, good acting is when it's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Her journey and what she did with it was one of the like more surprising yet believable aspects of the entire show for me.
It was the
Um,
level of denial as well, which was so heartbreaking, wasn't it? It was her completely not being able to acknowledge the scale of which this illness was real.
Yeah.
And her
And,
son's
like,
queerness.
they challenged the idea that mothers and like women are always like the more supportive ones with their children's queerness, because that's not always the case. But like, yeah, another one of my favorite parts of the show that I was like, I'm surprised that they went there, given that the women that they did have in the show usually took on like I said, like the mothering maternal roles.
Yeah. You have a lot to say on this, but probably the biggest downfall of the show was that the women in the show were used as never felt quite as fully formed characters as the men, which is fine, but I feel like they could have done more female characters, like Jill, for example, who plays the best friend who takes on the mothering role. You know, we always see her in relation to the people she's looking after, whereas we never really see her as her. That's what I felt, at least, as an individual.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. We did not ever get a sense of like what she's like beyond any of the rest of the boys, whereas I think with the boys we got a sense of their individuality apart from the group, whereas she was always just in the group. And she's like one of the only female characters in the show, apart from the actual mothers of the boys, and her mother as well. And I do think that's somewhat of a disservice to like the massive amounts of women in the LGBT community. And they did like show women around. There was definitely like a queer female character that challenged Richie a couple of times. I noticed her. I was like, bring her in more. Where's she?
What's her name? Like...
Exactly. Yeah. And you know, plenty of women died from AIDS as well.
The only reference to it really was when Roscoe's father, who is a very conservative Nigerian pastor or priest, and he tells when the AIDS crisis was obviously in the late 80s was really hitting Africa very hard, and he comes back and he says women, children, they have it as well, as if it's, you know, and it's a revelation that it's not the gay man's disease. But that was the only really credence they gave to the idea that it wasn't, which is fair because that's what the stigma was. That was what it was, and that's the community that got impacted the most in the United Kingdom. But yeah, I agree. It could have had a little bit more with women, and I don't think that's too much to ask. Like lots of people will, if people say that, people roll their eyes and go, they can't tell every story, and it's like, women aren't a minority group. Like they're not. They're fundamental. Their stories can be told easily.
It's like you do know who the L are in LGBT,
exactly.
right?
It's and they were there pretending they weren't there, or at least like not telling their stories as much as they should. Probably it was a bit of a like you said, like a disservice, but a small criticism. More stylistically, I think for some people, like I was speaking to my parents about it, and my mum and dad don't have a very and some of my friends don't have a very high, I don't want to call it trite, but kind of cheesy, kind of overly emotional to the point where it feels unrealistic threshold. There we go. Put that in an acronym. but that's what they said. So if you don't, I would say give this a try because it's so important and it's really well made, but there were certain scenes where I felt a bit like, okay, this is a bit drama school. the bits where they broke the fourth wall for me got a bit kind of cheesy.
Yeah.
They say it was created in a laboratory to kill us. They say it's the Russians. They say we got it from the jungle. They say it's caused by friction.
Understand their purpose, because it didn't happen enough for it to make complete sense to me. I kind of got it, but if they'd done it more, it'd have made more sense.
It was, I think it was the shifts of tone that they were trying to achieve, because obviously it was a extremely dour, sad, tragic topic, but then they were also trying to show the joy and the fact that these people were happy and they were having a good life. So I think those shifts of tone they tried to do were different. So they broke the fourth wall when they were trying to be like telling jokes and stuff, and then they went more hyper realistic when things got darker. But it just felt a bit of whiplash there. I feel like it could have been balanced better, but again, a very small criticism. The whole thing, a nice thing to watch and important.
It's a very timely release for considering like the current situation that we're all in, and it has a lot of things to say that people probably do need to hear right now.
Why do I need all these? I mean, cancer's not infectious.
It's to protect me, not you.
Oh.
Idiot.
Yeah.
About like what we're dealing with coronavirus. And like the misinformation, fear mongering. I wish, this is one of my things, is like, well, I don't know whether it's just a me thing or whether it would have worked or not, but I wish they'd politicized it a bit more. I don't think they politicized it enough, because so much of the AIDS crisis was like exacerbated by the failure of governments to educate people or even being willing to engage with what's happening. The government and the higher ups and Margaret Thatcher have a lot to answer for how bad that it got, and their unwillingness to engage with it at all because they thought it was dirty and disgusting and not something that was proper to talk about. Yet, as we see, all these people are dying, not knowing what's happening and what's right or what to do, and having to scramble for information. And the only reason that people got information is from groups like we saw in It's a Sin, who organized themselves, who, you know, created the phone lines, created places for people who were interested or needed to know stuff could go to.
They had to do it themselves.
Exactly. So in that, I wish they made more of a point about, because it was in there if you knew to look for it, but I don't think it was blatant enough in that, these groups existed, but they existed out of a necessity because no one else was doing anything, and I don't think that was obvious.
Yeah, and I don't think it's, it's known fact that Margaret Thatcher and voted for legislation and put legislation in place that was explicitly anti LGBT and homophobic, like the being unable to teach anything about homosexuals in schools, Section 28. It's just like not mentioning her or showing her in it. They mentioned those
The
stuff
back
in kind
of
of
her.
comedic. The back of her.
That was like
one
a
of the
funny
characters
scene.
like pissed in her coffee, and that was like oh, you got her. And it was they mention it, but they don't really mention it. They made it less
like she's like some like really far off figure that has nothing really to do with it except like, oh, she's there and we hate her. Like, no, there's a very clear direct correlation between what's happening to you and what she was doing and what the rest of the government was doing, and by not helping you. And that's very relevant to today, I think. In that sense, I really wish that they pushed more on it, because because I know I at least who'd like obviously done a lot of like research on the subject, my mind went there, but I don't know that the viewer who doesn't have any information on it would go there.
Yeah. And I don't know whether that was just a kind of trying to make it, you know, this kind of idea that take politics out, it's still about the people and stuff, but taking politics out and then removing a key aspect of what happened, it's not politicizing it, it's just telling the story fully.
Yeah.
And taking that out reduces it somewhat. But definitely in regards to Corona, the fear mongering at the beginning, the people not knowing what to do. At one point, there's a scene where one of the boys who got diagnosed with AIDS, he drinks battery acid, or at least he's with a group of people who drink battery acid because there was a rumor that that was going around. And, you know, this whole thing, you know, no one actually drank bleach, but, you know, at the beginning of coronavirus. But there was a lot of fear. And I think a huge sense as well, which I think what they were pushing with this is the idea of community. And in this sense it was the gay community, but communities everywhere are now coming together for Corona as well. So yeah, prescient.
Yeah, I think the other thing that really got me, and I think is relevant to today, but I don't know that when they made it they would have known that it would have been so relevant today, was public and private grieving and mourning. Because I like, if we're talking about the society that we're in at the minute, I don't think we're as a society dealing with what's happening to us and like how many people are dying and like how we're dealing with mourning and the grief process, both as like a community, as like a society, and then also like personally, because you know there are people that can't go to funerals and you know have that like ceremony or like way to be able to like say goodbye to people. And that was a huge theme of this show, and I think one of the more upsetting aspects of it that they really didn't hold back on, because it was the like breaking up of the found family, and how like as each person in it that did get AIDS and eventually die was like taken away to die in privacy and shame and hidden away, and the found family and the people in the queer community did not get to grieve properly over the people that they lost. And even the people that did have like didn't have to die so privately, without spoilers, who did have like a supportive parent, for example, they mentioned being like, I can't even get someone to bury him because they don't want people to handle a dead body with AIDS. So like stuff like that, I think for me was the most upsetting part. But something that they did the most effectively out of everything that they went for. Because if like a character dies and you can say goodbye properly,
closure,
the closure of it, and there's a sense of being able to eventually move on even if you are really upset about it, but you didn't ever get that at any point in the show, I don't think. Which is, yeah, I think that's the most effective part of the show for me, and that they did really, really well.
They showed these boys dying alone in their home bedrooms, and then one family had a bonfire and burned all of their belongings, old baby photos, even photos of when he was a kid. They burnt them because they were so ashamed. And shame is a huge factor in this show, and it kind of motivates a lot of what happened. And obviously the stigma around HIV and AIDS, it's still there, absolutely still there, you know. And this shame, even the shame that you put upon yourself and that others place upon you as well, can just be so damaging, and cost lives at the end of the day. I think that was the main kind of the point at the end that Jill made,
Yeah.
It can, shame can cause so much more like corporeal physical harm than you would expect.
Yeah, you can't even quantify how much damage shame caused as like a factor of that in the entire AIDS epidemic.
Yeah.
You know,
People wouldn't seek help because they were so
exactly.
ashamed, and they wouldn't acknowledge it because they were so ashamed, and they would, not tell people because they were so ashamed, and it's just but yeah.
I really
fun.
enjoyed it.
I feel like we're getting very dour. It was a really
but it's
good
hard to
show.
talk about without...
It's difficult to talk about without what it was actually about, but it was really kind of fun 80s.
Great music,
lots of like fun
every
nightclub
song that
scenes,
came on. Yeah,
lots of sass and wit, and really nice characters overall. But yeah, no, you can't not talk about it without talking about the main
because
point, which is death
so
and
sad.
doom and gloom. But
the entire way through watching it, for me, like as I could never be fully happy watching it, because I always had like a sick feeling in my gut knowing where it was going.
I mean you spoke about this before, but you have a problem with, not a problem, but you find it frustrating how many queer stories are always so bloody tragic, doom and gloom.
Though this is the thing why I wasn't going to initially watch it, because I saw the trailer without knowing that it was about the AIDS crisis, so I just sat and watched the trailer, and the first half of it, where it's just like loads of gay characters having a great time, I was like,
I just want to be happy. I want to learn everything.
I'll be stinking rich.
I cannot believe Channel 4, like a huge like production, is going to be put on where it's just allowed to be like gay people being happy, but then it was like, and AIDS. I was like, oh, there it is. Because like I said, you can't really have, or there never really is like mainstream gay stories without gay suffering, and it's never like simple trivial things that gay people can be sad about. It has to be like life altering and shattering, identity crises inducing, death, sort of like that like level of badness that gay stories have to deal with. And like it like gay people can never just like be happy, and like
they can't have normal people problems.
They can't, not they have to, it has to be something awful. And I just was like, oh, and there are loads of stuff about the AIDS crisis, and like all of them have been good, and a lot of them have been about men, but I understand that a lot of people who are going to be watching this will be like, wow, I've never seen anything about it before. But if you do watch queer stuff, you'll be like, oh my, it's another one
where they all die.
It's just fit because like, I mean, it's mentioned in most things that are like period pieces, and at some point you're just like, I really just want to watch something where gay people are happy. Like, and I understand that it's important, and I'm not saying don't make it, but at the same, if we're making this, but can we also make stuff about queer people where they're not going through...
I think the thing that people are talking about It's a Sin so much is because so many people don't know, and I think that's the most tragic part, and I think this is really catering to an audience that maybe didn't know the extent of the AIDS crisis, which is, it's not ignorance, but it's a certain level of disconnect that they would have had to have. But it is important, but I agree with you that it, have a happy story, have a rom-com, like a gay rom-com or anything. Or
but there are those that exist, but they're never anywhere popular. Like that's why I was surprised. I was like, oh my god, Channel 4 are doing something that's just got loads of gay characters in it, and they're all like friends, and it's just going to be like a TV drama, but they just all happen to be gay in it. And I was like, that's revolutionary. And then obviously it wasn't.
Yeah, it has to be more than that
Yeah,
if it
and
merits any kind of big TV time.
Yeah, and like I do get it, and I do get it's important, but then at the same time I'm like, there is part of this that's just made for a straight audience.
Yeah.
So
it's,
you know,
it's
if they were doing
educational,
yeah, I was like, if they were doing more than just this, I'd be like, hell yeah, I want all parts of like queer history on screen, because it's so vast and so interesting. And that's the other thing as well. I was like, there's more to queer history than just the AIDS crisis. And they did touch on that in the show, with Neil Patrick Harris's character and his partner, and how they were like, yeah, we've always existed, and we've not even existed hidden. We're in plain sight.
Yeah.
And I felt that scene was really, really good and interesting. And I was like, I wish that is the approach
yeah,
to making more stories about like queer history, because that is very true. But they're always just either extreme secondary characters that are like hate themselves, or struggling with coming out, or dealing with their sexuality, and or like
it's either
dying in droves,
or you know, they're struggling to come out, they're closeted and in pain, or you know, they're there's lots of religious conversion therapy stories that get told about queer people,
and I get why, because as a storytelling device, it's a built-in conflict. It's a very easy story to tell when it's and
these stories should be told as well, don't get us wrong.
Yeah,
you know, because obviously people need to know that these horrible things have happened. But I mean, the same criticisms gets given in Black cinema, where Black people are really, from what I've read, are really getting sick of the only stories being told about Black people are about suffering, about slavery, about civil rights, you know, and not just about them being people and living lives. And you know, they don't even have to be happy stories, you know, they just have to be stories that aren't about the fact that they're Black, or stories aren't about the fact that they're gay. But at the plot point,
that is what's giving them the trauma.
And that's what causes their problems, rather than, you know, maybe they're bad with money, maybe you know,
exactly.
other issues.
It is like that though.
Like maybe they're a fireman and they get in a fire, you know, stuff like that.
This is not to bring it back, but this is why you need to watch Black Sails.
Here we go.
Episode 2, baby, getting it in. But that is a story that handles queer people, their sexuality, the society that they're in, and how it views it in the most spectacular way that I've ever seen in TV. Like,
Black Sails, for those who don't know, is Nell's favourite show ever. It's about pirates of the Caribbean, basically, but better.
That is the show for me that now is like the benchmarker of how to deal with queer characters. But you know what I mean, like as like writers, where the sexuality is important because it's a part of them, it's a part of their story, but none of them, and there are certain struggles that have come from that, and there are plot points that do come from their sexuality, but it's not in the usual vein of like struggle that all the rest are in. And there's a lot of like empowerment in it, and it's all in a historical setting, and it's all completely believable.
But yeah, overall great show, really recommend it, especially if you don't know much about the AIDS crisis.
Especially if you don't know about anything about the AIDS crisis, I do think it is important viewing. And even if I do have like my very specific hypercriticisms of it, it is something that I would definitely encourage people to go watch,
without a doubt.
And have a sit and think.
Well made. but it's fun as well. I can't keep going on about how fun it is and then not fun, but it is good. It is great. It reminded me as well, just some more recommendations if you want more, if you finish this and you want more kind of queer stories, especially set in the 1980s, which was such a big time for queer rights. Worried About a Boy is a biopic starring Douglas Booth as Boy George, and it's about his life basically, and it was really, really good, and I would argue better made than It's a Sin, because I really, really love it. But hot take from me, that's just my opinion. I think the writing and the acting was stronger in Worried About a Boy. So if you want to watch that, it's a mini series, and it basically doesn't it's not much about AIDS, but it's about Boy George and queerness and his life in the 80s, and it's really, really good. So watch that.
Yeah, and there's also the 2014 film Pride.
Our favourite film in the whole world.
Yeah, I'm obsessed with that film. Also makes me cry, but for different reasons.
Yeah.
And I think that's a more joyful film than It's a Sin is in its joy. And it's a great film.
I watch it once every 6 months just to get me going, and it will make you cry, but not in a bad way, in a really, really great way. It will make you cry. It's really
so like a really healthy cry.
Really just oh yes, you come out of it and you're like high off the cry. It's so good. I love that film so much. But yeah, I think that's all we have to say about It's a Sin, and that's the end of Avoiding the Void for this week. We got a bit serious there in the middle.
Less jokes this week.
Less Bridgerton jokes this week. We'll try and for next week we'll try and pick something booky maybe to watch that we can
let's do
something a bit harder.
And
but
something so bad.
Let's find something terrible and then we can really talk about it. Terrible but fun to watch. But yeah, it just really recommend it. We couldn't not talk about It's a Sin. Really recommend it. But those are our 2 cents. I hope you enjoyed. Signing out.
See ya.
See ya.